Hey, Paul, want to hear a joke?
Sure.
What do you call a horse that likes to stay up late?
I don't know, you got me.
A nightmare.
Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. Welcome back. I take it you got your canvas all stretched and are ready for the next step. What do you say, horse? You ready for the next step?
Oh, giddy up. Let's get to painting.
We don't get to paint just yet. First, we need to learn how to prime a canvas. It's essential that you learn how to prime a canvas in order to protect your support and also enhance your painting. So, what do you say?
Oh, can I do the line?
The let's get to it line?
Yeah.
Okay, but I should probably do the thumb.
Oh, that's fine.
Alright, are you ready?
Yeah. Let's get to it.
You can brush the blues away by painting with Paul Kenneth today.
Painting with Paul Kenneth.
Alright, so the things you'll need to get started are a raw, unstretched canvas, a small 1 to 2 inch paintbrush. This can be a cheap hardware store paintbrush, some acrylic white gesso. Just get the store brand, no need to get anything fancy. Empty container to mix your gesso. Later on, you're going to need some sandpaper. I prefer 150 grit. A palette knife to mix the gesso. If you want nice clean edges with a raw canvas look, get some painter's tape. 1 to 2 inches depending on how thick your canvas is. And then last but not least, just a little bit of water. That's it. Let's start. Alright, so first things first, you want to make sure your canvas is nice and clean. You can start with your clean paintbrush, brush off any crumbs, cookie crumbs, hairs, things that might be left on there. If you want, you can also do the tape method, just a little bit of tape or a lint roller. You just want to make sure that there's nothing on the canvas that you don't want mixed in with your gesso. Alright. Now, I'm going to take my gesso. For the first coat, it's always good to mix it with a little bit of water. The water is going to allow for proper absorption into the canvas. I'm just getting as much as I think I'll need. If you get too much, you can always save it. If you don't mix water in, you're just going to end up using a little bit more gesso, and it's always good to save money. I'm adding in just a little bit of water. You can also add in some like acrylic medium, like the acrylic matte medium. And I'm just kind of mixing that up till it's one good consistency. So this now is going to act both as a sizing and a bit of a primer. If you did not want to use white gesso, if you wanted to go for the natural canvas look, you would just use straight acrylic matte medium, no water necessary because it's already pretty liquidy. So I'm getting that nice and mixed. Seems to be good. When I apply it, I always start in the middle and just kind of do some X's. It's good to have the center stretched before like one particular corner just to ensure that it is going to be stretched evenly. And once you start putting it on, you'll see it become absorbed into the canvas. And we're just trying to get an initial coat on here using all directions. You want to make sure you're going in all directions, that way you ensure that you coat the canvas perfectly. If I was using just straight gesso right now, I'd be using a lot more and it would take longer to be absorbed into the canvas. Alright, and with the magic of video editing, we're now going to make this complete. Ready? Voila! There you have it. I have a fairly even coat of gesso across the whole thing. Now is the time to take a look, see if there's any chunks or hairs that are on there. You can grab those off with your palette knife, or if you have clean fingers, you can try to get them off that way. I usually don't care too much, but big chunks are going to mean that you have to sand a little bit more later. So I just like to check and make sure we got an even coating. That looks good. Now you want to let that sit and dry. Depending on your environment, it could take anywhere from 3 to 12 hours. So let's wait for it to dry and then we'll move on to the next step. In the meantime, make sure you wash your brush, your container, your palette knife. Otherwise this is going to dry and make for a very difficult future. Alright, our canvas is now dry, so we are ready for the first true coat of gesso. This coat and all future coats do not need any water. Just the very initial one is the one that you mix water in with. So I can just take it right from the tub and start to apply it. Again, I'm starting with the middle and working out. If you are looking for a canvas that has more tooth, so a rougher surface, that will help to pull the paint off your brush. What you will do is only use a brush to apply the gesso with, and you work the gesso in as before in all directions, but the very last direction, once the whole thing is covered, you'll take your brush and just swipe across in one way like that, and that is going to give you just a slight little brush stroke, and then the next coat, when you end it, you'll end the opposite way, and by doing that multiple times, you're creating kind of like a hatch mark of very small brush strokes that create a nice rough surface that will hold the paint right off your brush when you start brushing the paint on. If you want a smoother surface, which is how I like it, you can apply the gesso with a palette knife. Got a big old globby glob in there. If you're applying with a palette knife, you want to use a very, very clean palette knife. Make sure there are no leftover pieces of paint or grime on there. And you're going to be scraping it flat with the back edge. So I put it on, and then I'm just spreading it as such. And you can already see it's a smoother surface that's made. It's pushing the paint down into all the little divots and also pulling it up. So it's pushing it down, and then any excess is getting scraped away. And that's going to give you a very, very smooth surface. Once you have at least 2 coats on, you can start sanding in between each coat. So pretend this is completely gessoed at least 2 or 3 times, fully dry. Then I can take my sandpaper, 150 grit, and then very lightly I'm going to sand it down in a circular direction just a couple of times to work off any little particles and work down some of that rough texture. The smoother you want your canvas, the more coats and more sanding in between each coat. I am very fond of an extremely smooth surface, so I usually put about 10 coats with sanding in between each coat starting after the 3rd. And that will give you a very, very slick, smooth surface where as you brush paint on, you're going to see the whole brush stroke that kind of sits and floats on the surface. If you have canvas that is rough, as you put it on, you're not going to see your brush strokes as much. It seems weird that it works that way, but that's how it works. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, and I will help you out.